Hello, thanks for joining us today. My name's David Moore, here with Equity Advantage today, and we just finished up our monthly CCIM program. It was very interesting on shared office space, but I'm blessed to have my good friend Jonathan here with me, and we're going to talk about cost segregation today. And I think we've got to start off by talking about what cost seg is. But I just, real quickly, Jonathan, you are now with a new firm, CBRE. You want to tell us a little bit about how you got into cost seg and how you got to CBRE?
You bet, David. I've been in the cost seg industry now since September of 06, coming up on my 13th year. CBRE tried to recruit me 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't know it. There was an opportunity last fall, and I decided to take it. But it's a great team of engineers, and they do wonderful work, and the level of execution delivery of the studies is perfect.
Well, that's great. Good. It's good to hear. And just in the audience, you don't know where Jonathan is, but tell them all where you're based. And obviously, we're in Portland today, but that's not home for you.
I'm based in the Seattle area. I'm a third-generation native of Seattle. I live in the Olympic Peninsula across the water, but I do properties in all 50 states in our republic. In fact, I'm finishing up a multifamily in South Carolina right now. But mostly my properties are down on the West Coast. But actually, I take that back. I just picked up another one in Chicago. So I'm all over the country.
So you got ahead. I was going to segue in. My next question was going to be, are you geographically limited? But you already took care of that piece, so I don't have to ask it.
That's right.
That's a good thing. So, Jonathan, people ask me all the time, you just walked in my office, and one of the people in the office said, well, what does Jonathan do? And I guess, in the most basic sense, in my simple mind, I look at cost seg, the most basic description I gave her was, you buy a rental house, and the most basic example of cost seg is the delineation between dirt and improvements on that, right? And what happens, let's say, with a rental house, if you're talking about a 27.5-year depreciation schedule, what happens with the return on that investment if you increase or decrease the allocation of the improvements? You increase the improvements, your ROI obviously increases dramatically and vice versa. But the thing I always get a kick out of, and I talk to people, ask them all the time, is, well, you bought that rental house, and understand in our 1031 business, people's first investment property a lot of time was their home, and then they maybe outgrow it, or they start off with a rental house and slowly grow it, and they get out of residential property, multifamily, hey, it's just a house, so everybody's feel comfortable with it, and then ultimately they end up branching off into some other type of more industrial type property or retail or something else there. But if we look at a rental house, who makes that allocation for dirt and improvements? Typically, I mean, you deal with this every day. It's your business. You're talking to tax people, legal people all the time.
Right.
In that example, in that most basic example, Jonathan, who makes those allocations? And then I'd like you to explain, give us a sort of just a quick broad scope of what cost seg is.
Well, cost segregation is nothing more than acceleration of depreciation, which increases one cash flow. By reclassifying those buildings into shorter depreciable lives from 27.5 on multifamily and 39-year on commercial. We're going to give them smaller lives of 5 and 7 year, which is personal property.
So we 15. Just look at a rental house, for example. We're just talking dirt, which you're not going to depreciate, and the improvements, which you're going to. And so, like a rental house is typically 27.5.
27.5, yeah. And those single family rentals. In fact, I've done a ton of them. We have a model for that as well. We don't even have to do a full-blown cost seg study. We can still get a study done, a report done for it that the IRS will approve. Did a ton of those last summer. But it's important to note that the owner and the tax professional will allocate what the building and land cost base is. The IRS frowns on us doing that. They want it to be an arm's length transaction. And whether there's a 1031 or not, once we get that net building excess basis and the land cost basis with a physical address, I can run the analysis for them at no cost to them.
So you made a comment earlier, so cost seg, it's not creating more depreciation, you're just accelerating.
That's right. You're accelerating the depreciation. So if you got $1 million basis, I know with certainty, regardless of product type, I know with certainty I'm going to accelerate anywhere from 25 to up to 50% of that cost basis. So you're looking at significantly $250,000 to $500,000 of that $1 million basis.
So if we look at what's a typical property look like to you? I mean, if I said, hey, Jonathan, is there a single property group that makes up, let's say, 25% of your business or something? What would that be? What's the most common asset that you do a study on?
That's a great question.
Or a value maybe too.
Okay.
And I guess my question is sort of a leading question, because I think historically people look at it and apply it to something like this big office building we're in.
Sure.
But if we just crank it back in the most basic sense to that rental house, we talked about dirt and improvements, but like in a rental house, what would you bust it up into? How many components maybe?
Oh God, there's even that, you're still going to break it down into 100 components, even in a little single family. And you're looking at the wiring in the house. You've got the flooring, if there's any base at all on the walls, wall coverings. We'll have to go in to take a look at the bathroom. Even the driveway is going to be 15-year. We'll look at the landscape, which is 15-year. The good news about cost segregation, regardless of product type, is you can also use it as an asset management tool, where then you're going to know, because our studies here at the cost seg group of CBRE, we give expanded detail, not only on the 1245, the personal side, but we're going to break down the roof, the HVAC, fire suppression. So therefore, when the client or the owner has to replace that unit of property or that component, they'll be able to know what the value of that, and then get it off the books and have an extra write-down condition going forward. And that's very important to note.
So back, I sort of interfered with your response to my question on, if we look at a common, what's the most common asset?
Multifamily's been the darling. Still the darling product performing the last 8, 9, 10 years. So you see, to answer your question on multifamily, depends whether it's surface parking or not. If it's surface parking, you're looking at anywhere from 15 to 21, 22% in a 5-year, and then surface parking anywhere from 7 to as high as 26, 25% at 15-year. So again, it ranges 25 to 45%. But it's important that light industrial, as well as distribution buildings and flex buildings, they may not be as sexy as a dental office or a fancy medical office.
Dental offices are really sexy.
They really are.
My dad had one.
In my perspective, they're very sexy because there's a lot of 5-year in there. So and I love dental offices. But the bottom line is that.
So by the way, just for the sake of the audience, when Jonathan's talking years, it's all that life of that asset.
Depreciable life. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. That's right. And so, even self-storage, heated self-storage, there's an important note. The HVAC systems for the self-storage, usually HVAC is stuck in 39 or 27.5-year lives. Well, in self-storage, that heating or that heated storage, that HVAC is specific to the business activity that the IRS talks about. And so that becomes personal property when you have a full-blown comprehensive cost seg study done. So there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, but some of my biggest yields meaning wonderful acceleration and depreciation, has been on like FedEx distribution centers, and they're not as sexy and pleasing to the eye as maybe as a fancy office or a dental office or a medical office, but boy, there's a lot of yield on those. Marinas is another one. The marinas, I love doing marinas.
So what? Give me an example of what you do with a marina.
Well, I love marinas. You've got all the clutches.
I love marinas too. I love sitting in them.
Yeah. Especially down south.
Yes.
You betcha.
Give me some sunshine.
But you've got those electrical hookups and the cabling, the water sewer. You've got those 20, 30, 50 amp switches specific to each slip. You've got those wonderful, all different sizes of clutches.
Sometimes pump valves.
And those are all personal property in nature. The marina itself, marinas and gas stations, at the end of the day, when we get done with them, they all end up in 5 and 15-year, and there's nothing left over. There's no 39-year. So there's a lot of yield on those particular types. But you name any kind of building, and I've delivered it. So I'm pretty excited about any kind of product type.
No, that's great. And as far as your first exposure to it, I mean, how were you made aware of cost seg? I mean, what happened? Where were you? And all of a sudden, hey, cost seg.
I had a childhood friend of mine lived in the back neighborhood. He lives in Santa Ana Heights, David, and he asked me if I heard of cost segregation. This was in the late summer of 06. He knew me in the wholesale lending background in the hospitality industry and knew I was very customer service driven as well as numbers driven. And he thought it was something for me to take a look at it. So I took a look at it for about 30 days, and that's when it all started. So literally the third week of September of '06.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's been an interesting ride, let me tell you.
So when I met you, I mean, Jonathan's real active with the CCIM organization, both in Seattle and in Oregon. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, both chapters.
I mean, Oregon, I know you are. I
every
see
month.
you every month.
Every month, 10 years.
And Seattle, I've bumped into you there in the meetings up there too, at least once or twice.
Yeah,
probably.
I'm up. Yeah, I've been a sustaining member for probably '08 on the Washington chapter and '09 on the Oregon chapter. I've been a sponsor like you for many, many years, and it's been a privilege to do so.
So I met you just shortly after you got started, because it's been
About 3 years. 3 years, yeah, 3 years, and my, my first big deal. It was in '08, and but my book of business finally really started taking off in 2010. I haven't looked back since, but nothing but hard work and being diligent.
That's great. Well, thank you for being here with us today. So once again, David Moore with Equity Advantage and IRA Advantage, and Jonathan Frizzell with CBRE Cost Seg. And once again, Jonathan's works out of Seattle, but he can do things coast to coast for you. So I guess the one thing I should say, since we're definitely delving into heavy tax today, or the conversation is, and Jonathan's mentioned a couple times, before you take action on anything that's presented today, make sure you're consulting your tax and legal counsel. And Jonathan will be happy to work with you, answer any questions you've got. We'll be right back. Thank you.